right, everyone. So today I'm joined by Natalie. I'm gonna mess up your surname, but Natalie Demont. How do you do the?
Jamal, it's a bit of an inconvenient surname.
Yeah, where does it actually come from? It doesn't sound South African.
No, it's not. It's from my grandfather's side of the family. We're all French Belgian, so it comes
Okay,
from there.
okay. I
But
was
it,
gonna
it
say it
really has,
sounded.
imagine as a grade five, everyone else is spelling their full names and yours is 28 letters. Even my name back at school,
Yeah,
everyone
yeah.
two names and mine went across my whole chest.
Oh, shame. Bit of trauma there, maybe. Yeah, so I invited Natalie on here today because we met recently, and I love the work she shares on Instagram. She does like really cool poetry and writing, and but Natalie's also been on this amazing healing journey with chronic fatigue, and we're going to hear more about it all now. So, yeah, I just wanted to hear Natalie's story in more detail. So where did it all begin for you? This whole kind of illness and healing path. And yeah, let's go back to the beginning.
Thanks, Kyle. Yeah, quite young. So I was still in school when this all sort of unfolded. And I think very sort of stereotypically loving high school. I
Mm,
absolutely loved my sport and swimming
okay.
specifically was my main part of my life in many ways.
Yeah.
That yeah, the whole, and I guess I'll circle back around to, but your identity
Mm,
and my identity looking back at that time was very much in friendships and sport.
okay.
Um, and yeah, perhaps there's a bit of academia, but it was also
Yeah.
in this
It
both of
wasn't the
those.
priority.
Yeah. So the really the change was after maybe the peak of my swimming career, if you can call it that, at such a young
Yeah,
age,
yeah.
relative to a 16-year-old whose whole life
Yeah.
it is.
A high school swimming career. Yeah.
Oh man, so good. And we had come off the back of a sub-Sahara gala, so swimming for sim and doing all my best times. And I remember after that wanting to quite quickly keep going because you're on this
Mm,
amazing high of just a wonderful time and feeling strong in your body and
mm,
ready to go and ready for the next thing. And the vision is becoming clearer for the way
mm.
forward path.
Yeah.
And just then being in the pool and really, really having a full body
Okay.
heaviness, like when you have flu,
Mm,
um,
mm,
but still kind of keeping going, wanting to at least complete
mm.
this. And then it actually got to the point where my coach said to me, "What is going on? Like, this is
Right.
not,
Yeah.
you can't even keep up with the session and you're sick." And I was
Yeah.
in a bit of denial, like,
Yeah.
oh my
Yeah.
God, going. Um, but anyway, what it unfolded to be was chronic fatigue off the back of Epstein-Barr virus, which is also glandular
Mm,
fever. So yeah, what I can understand about it is the the illness itself is almost irrelevant to the rest of the story. So whether
mm.
it's night fever or
Yeah.
glandular fever or emotional burnouts in an
Yeah.
office space,
Yeah.
it actually doesn't matter
Mm.
the sort of root cause, but
Totally
at
agree.
least,
Yeah.
yeah, it's sort of like just
Yeah, it's like
the
so many different triggers for different people, and that initially is often the fixation where it's like, oh, okay, it's this, it's that, but like the root cause can be, it's very
yeah,
different. Yeah, yeah,
yeah, and you're exactly right. It was an obsession to understand
mm,
the root cause at the time.
yeah,
Uh, exactly as you've said, a lot of
yeah,
blood tests and um, deep. I went for a CAT scan at one stage because it felt like such a confusing shift to go
mm,
full body strength to complete inability to
Yeah.
perform or think clearly in any way. So I'm sure, yeah, people listening to this, because chronic fatigue is so much more common
Yeah.
now and more than we think as well, because and it can be called a whole series of different things. I think
Yeah.
burnout is
Yeah.
after touch for chronic fatigue. But yeah, this and chronic fatigue in its fullness is really the complete inability for your body to produce adrenaline or anything
Right.
close to
Right.
of adrenaline. So the feeling of it is just a complete flatness.
Yeah. Yeah.
There's no joy, but there's also no deep sadness. There's just no motion in
Mm,
your being.
yeah.
Uh,
How old were
and
you when that first happened?
16,
Okay,
yeah.
wow. That's a lot to deal with at 16.
Yes, and you deal with it in such an interesting way, without
Yeah.
knowledge or deep knowledge of self,
Yeah. Yeah.
really.
Yeah.
It was definitely a beautiful gift in being my first, and these have kept coming around and they still will.
Mm, mm,
My first lesson in dropping your identity and
mm.
really grieving. Yeah, dropping is the wrong word, it's too late, but really grieving
Yeah.
whatever it is that you've identified with.
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah. So
and
how did how did that unfold for you like at that age? So you're 16, and you're doing really well at swimming, and then it hits you, then you start kind of going to the roots of trying to figure it out, going for scans, going to doctors, going to this. And then yeah, how did it unfold from there? Like
mm,
finding yeah, other routes or and also how did you like uh deal with the being at school and all of that at that time as well?
mm, yeah, so the emotional order of it, I guess, before finding full healing was
Mm,
the the sort of obsession with the roots, and
mm,
then a lot of anger,
mm, mm,
and frustration and feeling and loneliness, which
yeah,
I don't think people speak about so often with this
yeah,
disease. Incredibly lonely
yeah,
because you don't have energy, but you're not vomiting and you know
yeah,
poop. So you look
yeah. You
in
look
all
you look
external ways
fine.
very
Yeah,
functional.
yeah,
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 completely functional.
yeah,
Um, and without being able to fully describe to anyone
yeah.
what you're experiencing, you lose a lot of people
Mm,
because you
mm,
don't have energy for your friendships
yeah,
in the same capacity, and you don't have energy to, I mean, attend anything, including
yeah.
for school for a long time. So my mum was incredible at the time. I became from full boarding, I became a day scholar.
Okay.
Um, but that was quite intermittent for a period because
Mm,
some mornings you just can't get out of bed
yeah,
and
yeah.
be standing and dizzy and things. So yeah, so the loneliness was very, very real in that time.
Mm,
And
mm,
understood, you feel like you have lost your identity. You've lost
yeah,
these things that, you know, who you were or who you
yeah,
perceived
yeah,
as. And then you're not always accepted by
yeah,
by people seemingly closest to you because they've also loved you for an identity that
yeah,
maybe is the deepest part of yourself.
yeah.
Mm.
Yeah, that's
So
true. The loneliness, I think, is a good point because it's like, yeah, I think it's one of the biggest parts of this whole thing is you become so outside of the world that you were living in before that. Like it's just like a complete removal from that. And and the identity thing is such a good point. Like I often love to speak about that aspect of it because it was so huge for me as well. I was a similar thing. It might happen later, like I was like 20, but it was all these identities just being stripped away, which later on becomes a beautiful gift because it's like that's the only way that you see you weren't any of those things. But
yeah,
the the process when it happens, especially when you're only like 16, you're still busy building up identity and that kind of thing. And now it's kind of being ripped away. It's a brutal process.
A brutal gift, a brutal.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, Kyle, how was your, did you experience a similar emotion around it, or what was your
Yeah.
kind of process of emotions, if there was one?
Yeah, yeah, for sure. And different, I'd say different emotions at different stages, but the loneliness part, I think, was uh, a big one to come to terms with, but
Mm,
also one of the greater kind of ones to work through and come to terms with. Because I think, that's one of the ones that we're all running from so much is this fear of being truly with ourselves, like
mm,
in our own aloneness. And I
yeah,
remember there was a period where I really faced that, and it was one of the biggest reliefs of my life to be okay
yes,
with being lonely when I'd never been okay
yes,
with it before. Um, I was completely
dude, yeah,
yeah, yeah, I was completely on my own. I'd been staying with my parents and then I was living on my own and meditating a lot. And there'd always been this running from this loneliness and to just I mean, it takes a lot, like it takes a while to get there, or it did for me, of like
yeah,
chipping away at it. But eventually it was very like relieving, yeah, to be okay to be
yeah.
lonely. Yeah.
Yes, so powerful, and be
Yeah.
alone, lonely, and feel
Yeah.
the full sense of yourself
Yeah.
that can't be taken away. That part of yourself that you feel in meditation or creating alone, or
Yeah.
just uh, being in nature alone, whatever it is. There's something that's
Yeah.
thoughtless and formless and powerful, and it's
Yeah.
not external.
Yeah, exactly. And you don't get to the beauty of it, like that joy in your own aloneness until you've kind of been through all of that fear and all of the stuff that's like blocking it, where we're so afraid of not being engaged with everybody else that until something comes and like blows you open to it, then you eventually get the kind of the joy of it. But it's like, yeah, we have to go through those barriers, I suppose.
Yes, yes. And I think just on one of the things you said about learning the external, that's unfolding for me, which took long. It was 10 years, and I don't know if you had the same experience of even once healed the first time around, but it took me about 6 months to be walking around again and not feeling dizzy. But
Mm,
every
mm,
couple of years in a sort of any high pressure environment or
mm.
stressful and there would be a recurrence, never as long,
Yeah,
but two
yeah,
or 3 weeks, a month of just being really like back on floor zero.
yeah, yeah.
Um, and that it was almost the later lessons or the later occurrences that I felt, okay, it's enough looking at and obsessing with the physical, you
Mm,
know, I don't know what's going on in my body. Where's my adrenaline? Where's my cortisol?
mm, mm.
And then the later occurrences were much more about what's going on in my life emotionally
Yes,
that's
yes, yes.
flattening me.
Yeah.
Why am I drained? This can't be a coincidental physical recurrence,
Yes,
you know,
yeah.
in this state.
Yeah. You have like a deeper understanding of the relationship between like what you're feeling and like a more holistic perspective on what might be causing it. Yeah. But we're
Yeah.
jumping ahead now. I want to go back to um your unfoldment of healing. So what started to, yeah, like how did the healing what started to work for you, I guess, when you were kind of, uh, yeah, well, you were originally sick and, yeah, what were the first things that started to align with you to work?
Yeah. I think from a place of real depression, for lack of a
Mm,
better word, I think it is what it was.
yeah, yeah.
You get to, or I got to this word enough. I'm
Mm,
enough. And it was quite an emotional enough, like I'm enough of also feeling sorry for myself. I'm enough
mm, mm,
energy, I'm enough. And what can I change? And it wasn't a lot, but it was just bringing more gratitude in for what is or what was,
mm,
and and acceptance. I think acceptance really
mm.
being the word, and maybe acceptance before gratitude, because
Yeah, yeah,
to, yeah, even find that frequency of gratitude, there's almost first got to be some level of acceptance.
yeah. True.
Then physically nothing changed. I was sick
Mm,
for ages.
mm. How old
Um,
were you when you kind of got that, like, that feeling of acceptance and enough of the kind of, yeah, struggle?
yeah, I think the first time around there was an essence of that. So in those
Yeah,
first six,
yeah.
the end of the first 6 months of like, okay, I accept.
Mm,
Um, it's this every cyclical
mm.
time, whatever it was, every year or every 2 years when this recurrence would happen, I think I was getting closer and closer to accepting it as part of myself without
Yeah.
feeling angry at myself for not being able to function or like I was
Mm,
late. You get this sort of societal voice in your head that says
yeah.
if you're not doing something or achieving something, you're lazy.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
it's our own voice, and when we speak to our body like that, we're speaking to a whole universe. We are literally telling
Mm,
ourselves our new truth. And
mm.
to step out of that belief that I'm not lazy, and just because I'm not doing something, it doesn't mean I can't be productive. And productivity then took some kind of a new form.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah.
yeah, and this realization of being, which
Mm.
we hear so often now, and it's such a strong message that you can just be,
Yeah.
but to actually embody that as a
Yeah.
real belief is, ooh, it's
Yeah.
and hard to get to. And even when you do get to it, it has this kind of dappled characteristic where for these moments of being in your flow or in meditation or asleep or just doing something gently, you feel that you really feel that you're
Yeah.
okay with yourself just being.
Yeah.
And then you kind
It,
of rise to the world again and it throws you back into
yeah, yeah.
do, do.
Yeah. It's like, where's that feeling? I swear it was here somewhere.
Yeah, what
Yeah.
was that message again?
Felt
Yeah,
so profound, but it's
yeah,
gone. Yeah, but it's
yeah,
funny what it often takes for us to really, yeah, realize that okayness of being is like sometimes life has to really show us no other way, like with the fatigue and illness, whatever, where it's like otherwise we would just keep finding something to do or keep kind of running from that, you know. And I think also we have to release all of that or come to become aware of all of that conditioning that is in the system that like has to play out, but like all of that anger of like, oh yeah, I should be doing something. And it's like, oh, okay, that has to kind of come up, be processed in the way that it does. And then the next
yeah,
time around is maybe not there in the same kind of, yeah, intensity. And then the beingness is a little bit more like, yeah, the acceptance is a little bit stronger. And then I really like what you said earlier about the acceptance gratitude relationship, because I think that's so true, where I often share that with people is like to work on because that was what was really important for me, was to become grateful for my symptoms. But it's so true that that's only possible if you've accepted your like your situation and your symptoms and everything first. Yeah.
it was this learning that came like later in the understanding. So the first learning felt really physical with what am I
Mm,
doing, as in, am I busying my day with too much physical
yeah, yeah,
activity? And that was the obvious cause, right? Or at least for me,
yeah.
it was swimming. and it was physical and it was pushing your body and then pushing your body too much and overgiving, perhaps in that.
mm.
And then down the line, there was this understanding of what doing can look like energetically, and
Mm,
emotionally doing too much,
mm.
which sometimes is so, so subtle because it's it's not comparable with anyone else. It's not
Yeah.
even comparable with your former self or future self. It's just in the moment, how much do you actually have to
Mm,
give,
mm.
or to do? And going back
Yeah.
to your word,
Yeah.
um, for me, that was the bigger of the two parts of healing, the physical and the emotional. That was the point. That was the crux of it
Yeah.
all. And
Yeah.
was emotional doing
Yeah.
and overdoing.
That's a good point. Specifically, I like what you said about like, yeah, you can only really feel it, uh, yeah, yourself. Like it's very different. Like there's no, this is how much you should give, or like and that's I think that's what's good about uh all of the physical challenge in the body is that it's like well, you really have to learn to get in touch with the body, like,
Yeah,
and then only through all of that can you kind of start to know, not just through like, I don't know, analyzing everything on a piece of paper of like, this is how much I should do, this is how much I shouldn't do. It's just like comes from that feeling in the moment of, and like reflecting on my own journey. Um,
yeah,
there's so much like again conditioning that had to come out of doubting that feeling, where it was like a part of me always kind of knew what was like causing my fatigue, or not like always knew, but it became more and more obvious where it was like
yeah,
certain behaviors, certain activities, certain people. um but
yes,
we've learned to really doubt that kind of part of ourselves, where it's like I have to firstly fit in with what everybody else is doing, and secondly I have to like do things from an intellectual space rather than this just doesn't feel right, so I'm not going to do it space. It takes a lot
yeah,
to really start to trust that.
yeah, so strong, so strong. I really, really resonate with that because,
Yeah.
yeah, there's first a whisper, then a thunder feeling to all,
Mm,
and that whisper is always there in
mm,
all of us all the time.
true.
Of
But sometimes we need the thunder to pay attention. Yeah.
yes, and the thunder can give you a fright sometimes.
Yeah. Yeah,
It's just,
exactly.
but if you keep suppressing and keep suppressing, or keep putting yourself in the same situation that isn't serving you or anyone else, and you keep doing it and keep doing it,
Yeah.
and it just builds and builds, and then really it you can't ignore anymore.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
Mm.
So to go back to how your journey was unfolding, how how did you start to get like, so one aspect was the illness was kind of forcing you to be uh more with yourself, be kind of
Mm.
more in not doing, which kind of gives you this taste of being. But was there any, did you like get into meditation, or yeah, what
Mm.
kind of was going down this path with you when this was happening? Did you read a book, or with the teachers that were resonating with you?
So yeah, two things that come to mind, although I think there were so many, like a
Yeah.
multitude
Yeah, there's
of,
little things here and there.
yeah, and one which was actually quite related to the acceptance was a book,
Okay.
The Choice by Edith Eger.
Okay.
Um, and she writes about, she's a psychologist and she lived through World War II and she lived through the concentration camps. And she opens her book with a story of her post concentration camp life as a psychologist
Right.
or psychiatrist. And the first person that comes in, I can't remember the exact details, but is in a truly, from all angles of the situation, truly traumatic life
Mm,
stage. She's in the middle of a divorce, and her young son is dying of a terminal illness, and they've lost their house. And it's just anything you could possibly imagine as a traumatic experience is
Yeah.
going on. Um, and of course she's in tears and she's in deep pain and deep suffering. And then the second person that comes in is almost exactly the same level of suffering, just
Mm,
deep agony and struggling, and life is so hard. And actually what it is that her new Porsche is the wrong shade of yellow. But, but
mm,
that story really, really helped me get rid of any guilt for feeling that I'm not dying, so I can't, I'm not allowed to feel this
mm.
life-changing event, or as a disease or a gift or a trauma, whatever it is. It almost felt like reading those words felt like, yeah, everyone's journey is so different.
Mm, mm.
Um, and that's I think where the real deep acceptance came of, okay, it doesn't actually matter what's going on the outside,
Yeah.
or whether I look this way or that way. It's my internal experience is full, uh,
Mm, mm.
what it is. And I think that's a strong message for anyone and everyone, because we can do both things. We can feel like, oh, this is more suffering than anyone else has had.
Yeah.
Um, Look at other people's situations, like that woman whose car was the wrong shade of yellow, and
Yeah.
judge them for suffering, and
Yeah.
judge them
Yeah.
for their sadness or their journey, and think you don't even know what it is to suffer, but they do.
Mm, mm,
The internal experience is no different to another trauma,
mm.
uh, or sadness, or or anything. So
Yeah.
that's
Yeah, I love that. That's because that, especially that last point, because that's, I think, the natural uh perception that everyone would generally will have on that kind of comparison. Will be like, oh, okay, yeah, but the one person suffering is really relevant and the other person suffering is irrelevant. But it's like acknowledging that uh yeah, that honoring your inner state, basically, that it doesn't actually matter what the external story is. It's like
yeah,
this here now is what I'm feeling internally. And yeah, and that was a huge thing for me as well, was to like um come to that space of understanding that the stories and the narratives and like all of the stuff of the mind was really not so important. It was like just about what was kind of coming up. Um,
yeah,
it's things become very nice and simple,
yeah,
but hard
yeah.
because like that's not what we want. The mind wants a complex story. Yeah.
Yes. And then that actually leads exactly onto probably the biggest, or definitely my most impactful tool that
Yeah.
led to full healing. Because I, like, yeah, comfortably and very truly say right now, I am completely healed from chronic
Yeah.
fatigue. There's no more cyclical part of it. It's
Yeah.
not in my system anymore. It's gone.
Awesome.
Um, and breathwork was completely the aid to the
Yes.
full healing, and just like exploding out of your reality. Because at that point, as you know, but when you've had something like burnout or chronic fatigue that happens in this cyclical way, it's so much deeper than just an accessory to your life. It's really is part of you, and
Mm,
it's your journey. So
mm,
to then break through from that pattern is like
mm.
stepping onto another vibrational frequency, I think, is kind
Yeah,
of what
yeah, yeah. So how did
um
how did that how did you enter that world? So when did
oh
that happen in your journey? And I remember you telling me a little bit about it when we met, but yeah, tell me more.
it was so cool, Kyle. It was such a cool, like, synchronistic
Yeah, yeah,
journey that opened to that. It was I'd been in a bout of chronic fatigue. So this was only about 2 years ago.
Okay.
And at this point, I was doing so much writing on like why, and I was there, I could
Mm,
see, okay, like expended energy and maybe in a group of people that it's just not aligned.
mm,
But don't keep saying yes to those things. Just
mm.
don't do that, And then I had been in a partnership or a light partnership, but where I was really like taking on the role of healer, and a
Okay.
lot of space and not more than I needed to, because there's no such thing as what you need to or don't need to. But
Yeah.
for me, at where my body was in that time, it was over my capacity.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, lots and lots of writing about all this stuff and feeling all that fatigue again and going, feeling those old patterns of depression and
Mm.
just yeah, exhaustion from it. And then finding this incredible book, which is called Living with Joy.
Okay.
Um, by it's it's channeled by Sanaya and it's Oren. Anyway, I'll
Okay.
send a link after this, but
Yeah, cool.
it's a very practical, like wonderful light book about how we are allowed joy in our lives
Mm.
and very practical steps to asking yourself, what brings me joy? And then
Mm.
wonderful meditations to feel into that and feel into joy.
Okay.
Um, in this practical step-by-step thing, it was one of the questions was write down 7 things that bring you joy, even if they're as simple as walking barefoot.
Right.
And so beautiful list came about, which was it was like being in the sun, walking barefoot, the sea, traveling alone,
Mm.
and there and then in the same like hour of reading and writing those things down, I also opened my laptop and booked a flight to Zanzibar. Just like fully off the cusp of having written those things down and
Right,
also being
right. It was like a following on from the joy
yeah,
stuff. Yeah.
strong, like strong flow state, and
Yeah,
also
yeah.
very lucky and privileged to have had a remote working job. So that
Okay.
wasn't for me.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, and then arrived there and with
Did
no
you have
plan.
any, like, you didn't have any plans for what you were going to do
No,
in
no,
Zanzibar?
no, not at all, not at all. I had booked where I was staying, and a friend had recently visited before, so I was asking him for like, where did you stay? Is this place nice? So he was
Okay.
my bit of a link.
Yeah.
Other than that, no plan. And then this strong feeling to, I have been practicing yoga through my life, so strong feeling to go and do yoga on my first morning.
Okay.
Um, and a flyer was on the like lodge backpacker
Yeah, yeah.
table, and I picked it up, and annoyingly there was no yoga at before 9 a.m. and I needed to work at 9 a.m., but there was breath work. And I was like,
Yeah.
okay,
Fine, I'll do it.
no, it's not what I feel like, but like I feel like something. And it was yeah.
Mm.
And I went to this wonderful grounding. It's like cement with beautiful flowy curtains. And there was this man, his name is Greg Moran,
Okay.
sitting there, and no one else pitched up. So him and I did this incredible, incredible breathwork journey
Well,
together. And throughout the week, I think 3 or 4 times in the week, I went, and actually every day, I think bar one, I was the only one to go. So we were having these incredibly immersive breathwork sessions, and I was learning through him the breathwork techniques, and then yeah, doing shamanic breathing, which I think you know quite a lot about breathwork, Kyle, and I don't know all the
yeah.
right terms, but basically it's I guess a journey style where you breathe into your tummy, into your chest, and then out, and
Okay, yeah.
it's completely rhythmic. You don't really deter from that or change from that.
Mm.
Um, but you yeah, and you feel the discomfort of it, and all these amazing things can come up with your
Yeah,
ego.
what was coming up for you when you were doing this?
I think so much around emotional leakage,
Okay.
uh, lack of a better word, but yeah, that, I guess the difficulty of actually just doing the physical breath, which sounds so silly if you haven't done breath work, because
Mm.
you can't imagine that breathing is hard. But
Yeah, yeah.
so yeah, the physical difficulty was part of it, because
Yeah, yeah.
as you know, part of chronic fatigue is not trusting your body fully. So
Mm.
to feel like in a like difficult exertion, there's fear that comes with it. It feels like I don't want to push my body too hard.
Yeah.
Um, and do it, so you feel your old patterns of weakness, which are very real.
Mm.
But coming up a lot of like, I'm scared, no, I can't like push my
Mm.
bar.
Mm.
Um, yeah.
Yeah, that's interesting. Yeah, because that's a huge like I haven't done a lot of breath work myself. Oh, I did a lot more meditation, just like kind of I did breath work here and there, but that's a good point about or an interesting point about the facing that fear of like pushing the body, because I think it's like you said, it's such a huge part of like the chronic fatigue journey is you really get these fears ingrained in you, like, and it's understandable completely, but that mistrust in the body, you go and do something and then that thought stream starts up of like, oh no, what's this going to lead to? Is this too much? So it's interesting
Yeah.
that was being triggered during the breath work, like powerful though.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, big, and struggling to find the line of like what's real healthy fatigue and healthy exertion,
Mm,
and what's like what really is putting the body in a place it doesn't want to go on a deeper level, not just on a physical.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah, so that's a cool concept. And I think in the whole of reality, even without fatigue, just knowing our bodies, that is something that keeps coming up. And then
yeah,
this this balance of amazing pushing all the limits of exertion, and
yeah,
then
yeah,
also making sure that inwardly that's what your soul wants to do.
yeah. Yeah, so how would you say, because that's such like important distinction, is that um yeah, that kind of natural fatigue. 'Cause I think that's something so many people struggle with chronic fatigue, is like that natural fatigue or the kind of unhealthy uh like giving too much fatigue.
Mm.
How would you say that you can yeah, find that balance?
I think in so many ways, the acceptance to start,
Mm,
understand what ball game you're playing in, because if you accept that sometimes your body isn't strong, or you accept that sometimes rest is the more productive
mm,
thing, then you allow yourself, when you go into a situation where there's deep exertion, to really know that you aren't saying, I can't do this from a fear-based place, because you've already accepted
mm,
it.
mm,
So there's a different energy behind it. You aren't afraid of not doing something. So not doing something comes from a deeper place of, this is not the
mm.
time, this is not the way, or this is not in
Yeah,
me.
yeah, yeah,
Um, and then I guess that balances itself out by, yeah, if you aren't getting that feeling,
mm,
even acceptance that it's okay to do nothing, then you can push yourself in a very extreme,
yeah, yeah.
beautiful, strong way.
Yeah, I love how you said that, because yeah, I get that question from people often where, and it's difficult to articulate because it's a very um yeah, it's like a understanding of your own capacity and energy in the moment.
Yes.
But yeah, it's that's a good way to, how did you say it again? It's, oh, the acceptance of being okay with um not doing it, because I think, yeah, that's the thing, is um there's a lot of fear of yeah, it not being okay to rest. But at the same time, like I find this is where people sometimes get stuck, and I've kind of been through the
Yeah.
cycles myself. But maybe sometimes the fear is of activity, it's like that same fear of like pushing the body. So it's like you almost, yeah, you kind of need to see all of your own kind of mental patterns and fears, and then you stop uh living from that space, I suppose. Because yeah, I've had the same, whereas people ask me like, uh sometimes there'll be that feeling of wanting to rest and like being okay with that rest, but then sometimes I'll just go out and do like something absolutely crazy, and that feels fine too. But it's like it's that knowing that sometimes rest is what the body needs, and sometimes it wants to push itself. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think in a lot of those situations, there's no right way.
Mm,
Situations, there's no right way. So there's seasons or feelings that can
mm,
come and go and come and go. And I don't really believe in the whole now or never concept
mm, mm.
because there is there's just now anyway. So do what feels right. And if it's gonna
Yeah.
come around again, it will.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
there's
yeah.
no urgency in either way around,
Mm,
there's no right, and you haven't ever missed any opportunity because you're always only doing something in the now.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah.
Yeah,
That's beautifully put. Yeah, it's really like all the the stuff needs to be cleared out though. Like the resistance and the kind of fear needs to be met through whatever way that someone does that. Um, because yeah, that's where that because again it's sometimes difficult to articulate, but that's where that okayness comes with like whatever is happening, whereas like if I go out and I push myself and I feel how I feel, like that's just okay. Like, but
yeah,
I'm thinking like for people when they're stuck, it's this fear of like what's going to come up. Like I don't want to do this because then what comes up might be too overwhelming or too uncomfortable for me to deal with, or I'm gonna have to like, it's just this fear of like a future that you don't want kind of constantly.
yeah,
Whereas yeah, that's definitely what dropped away for me. And I sometimes find it difficult to say because it's like yeah, it's the fear of what's going to happen is kind of or, like it can come up again from certain things, but like majority, like that's what's gone. I don't know if that
yes,
makes sense.
yeah, it does, and it's
Yeah,
so
yeah,
powerful, Kyle, and beautiful. It really is.
yeah. So how
Yeah,
did
and
so yeah,
yeah, no, I was just gonna say that I think that is exactly what the breath work
yeah,
did to me, and almost exactly your words, but it just allowed that feeling of anything is
mm,
possible and nothing is right and nothing is wrong, but everything's
mm,
available to you. And then very clear healing from that like emotional doing.
mm,
Um,
mm,
in shamanic breathwork, it's crazy because you get or you can get, this is how it came for me, but very clear visuals of situations and people and faces and like the full
oh
feeling of
really?
reality. So there were lots of ways that I got shown myself in certain situations with
Oh
just
wow,
an overwhelming feeling of you don't have to be here, you know?
oh wow,
Uh,
interesting.
very strong, very strong. Like something as menial as like going to a party, that
Mm,
I want to be at, but saying yes. And it's definitely my fatigue or chronic fatigue journey has definitely been very linked to people pleasing and
mm,
maintaining relationships. And
yeah,
there's a simple way to love people and love everyone without feeling an onus to act on love all the time
mm, mm,
or show up all the time in a physical way. Like we can
mm,
love freely all the time, everyone, without it ever feeling burdensome or like it puts us
yeah,
in a that we don't want to be in.
yeah, yeah. Yeah, that's fascinating. That's cool that like so the breath work kind of almost helped reveal to you areas of your life where that
Wow.
was kind of happening. Yeah.
Yeah. And not always in, you think, oh, you know everything already in your subconscious, which obviously that's true, but
Mm,
it's
mm.
some of the stuff was very far from my consciousness, It's just
Yeah.
things that, oh wow, yeah, I do feel uncomfortable in that situation and
Yeah.
I don't want to keep doing that or
Yeah,
really
yeah. So
see.
yeah, yeah. So how did things unfold for you after that kind of uh breathwork period? Was that when like you felt like everything changed, or did you kind of um still have cycles of it or
Yeah,
uh,
it was amazing how that was my last cycle.
oh really?
Um, First time I've ever been able to say I don't have chronic fatigue. And you
Mm,
think you'll have it for the rest of your life. So
mm,
that that was powerful. But I think something that sort of maybe helped integrate it was I carried on with Greg after I left Zanzibar during it was meant to be an 8-week course, but we did it over 16 weeks.
okay.
Um,
So you're in
it's
Zanzibar for 16 weeks or
no. This was remote, what we carried
oh,
on
okay.
doing
So this was afterwards, yeah.
afterwards. Thank you, Sue. And was embodied alchemy course. And that, yeah, I think that was a big part of like really cementing in so many learnings and affirming so many learnings and also being guided. I think we all have the highest wisdom in us. Every
Mm,
single human on this planet is a vessel of absolute universal full wisdom and power.
yeah, yeah.
For me, in this instance, especially or specifically, it was amazing to be held through that journey by Greg and by this course and by these
Mm,
structures, because actually that's what the 8-week course was, is a structured unfolding. So some of it was things that you would do yourself, like a vision board, and similar to the Orange Book, What Brings You Joy,
yeah, yeah.
um, visioning how you want your day to day to look and how you want to feel in your day, things like that that are quite practical. And then also um, it was a Reiki and a breathwork session. So it was deep work that carried on afterwards that
Mm,
kind of
mm.
made it real.
Right,
Or
right.
yeah, I don't know, how have you found, did you feel like you have met a like changing point and a switch point, or do you feel like it's an
Mm.
ongoing?
Yeah, that's a good question. I also had this very kind of distinct shift period, which was like probably similar to your breathwork phase, which was um that was at the it was in 2023 or 2022, I think, where I was practicing a lot of meditation on my own and um doing a lot of kind of stuff around investigating the nature of self, basically, you could say. And yeah, eventually something just kind of lifted or released where it was, yeah, it was kind of coming to terms with anything that I was still running from. And with the big shift, the way that I would talk about it as well was it was uh, a big break from identification with thoughts. That was the key for me, was that like then any of the stories in the mind or whatever could kind of still be playing out. Um,
Yeah.
but it didn't affect me. Like, so I would go out and then the mind would be saying these things of like, oh, is this too much? Can you do this? And then it was just like quite funny to just observe that as like, you know, that not having an effect on my experience actually. Um,
Yes,
yeah.
like that. Yeah, yeah. Cool.
Yeah. Yeah, it's like I don't actually have to do anything about it. Whereas in the past, there's been like all these kind of triggers by thoughts, where it's like, oh no, it's like it's this kind of a thought, it's that kind of a thought. Um, yeah. So like trying to manage thoughts. But then it's interesting more of the like integration cycles after that, whereas that was a period where I was very kind of isolated and in the state of just purely on like my inner path, basically. And then it's been interesting to, yeah, kind of more of the stuff that you were talking about. Then after that was just like kind of throwing myself fully back into the world of like doing things again and exercising and engaging and socializing, and then starting to kind of get that kind of inner balance of oh, okay, this is where like an old pattern is coming up again, where I'm like, I guess that kind of like exploded this level of awareness, and now I was like having to expose myself to the world where I was going to see all of the old patterns that had caused like my really intense phase of fatigue. So then since then it's been like, yeah, it's just been kind of like an intuitive uh doing things, and then kind of like, oh, okay, that's not really vibing, but then uh yeah, hard to explain because I still kind of, yeah, engage with many people from my past, but you just kind of start, you know what started to happen is you, for me, the way I would talk about it now is it just starts to become more and more grounded, where um at first it would be like you get pulled into like other people's energy, and um yeah, I had to learn to live, and I'm still doing it, like learn to live in the world again, basically. And it's interesting with like travel and relationship and this and that. It'll bring up triggers that I hadn't seen, and then just kind of seeing whatever life circumstances reveal. Yeah.
Yeah, that's exactly what our souls do, I think, Kyle. They
Yeah.
get this deep download that often happens through like solitude or deep
Yeah.
healing and meditation. And then literally it's like, okay.
Now let me bring you all of the circumstances that's going to show you what you need to see. Yeah.
And that are gonna bring this stuff up. And I think on that part it really is a lifelong
Yeah.
journey, right? Because we always encounter new triggers as well, or
Yeah.
a new essence that can bring up an old pattern, or
Yeah.
so just sort of feel okay, I've overcome this thing now, and then life has a wonderful way of sending you another teacher or
Yeah.
circumstance that's like, oh my goodness, wait, I wasn't prepared for it like this.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
Yeah,
that I love. Yeah, life is the greatest teacher in the end, because it's like, and yeah, I often got this question from people, which I think is really relevant here, where it's like, how do I um, bring up the triggers, or how do I see the kind of the shadow emotions and all this kind of stuff? And from my experience, it's um, again, life put you in the situations you need. Because like for me, there was a period where solitude was what I needed to bring up the emotions. And but I didn't orchestrate that myself. You know, that I
I was
was
like,
like
"Yeah, oh my gosh, don't go looking for the shadows, they'll come
exactly. That's the thing. It's like, where if your shadow is
once you
around
meet
is
people.
if it's around solitude, then you'll find yourself in solitude and you'll have to face what you want to. And if it's around like being triggered by others, then that's where you'll find. So it's like, just expose yourself to life as
Life.
much as you can, and be open to what you don't want to see about yourself, basically, like what's coming up that's uncomfortable.
Yes. And I think to add to that point, we also don't have to learn in difficult ways. So
Mm,
the stuff that wants to come up, there is a way of seeing all these things joyfully, not
yeah, yeah.
every maybe in a very enlightened world. I'm not there yet, but there's definitely a way where these hard things can have a lighter touch and a lighter touch and a
Mm, mm,
when you can see whatever the shadow is, or the person who's triggering you or who's hurt you, and greet that part of yourself that seems ugly, or the
mm,
person mean, and just start with thank you.
mm,
Then suddenly it doesn't have to be that heavy, because you
yeah,
realize the universe is just expressing itself through all these different forms and
Mm,
feeling that light needs dark and
yeah.
dark needs. We really don't have to dwell on sadness and heaviness. We really are entitled to
Mm,
be free and live from a heart space and live with love. It's available to us.
yeah, yeah. Yeah, that's beautiful. I love the thank you kind of approach because that's nice as well because it's something practical that can give you a starting point if you're like very in a feeling of like stuckness or something coming up that feels very triggering. It's like, okay, I'm aware that I'm triggered, but what do I do now? And it's like it's powerful. Like I've used that so many times myself, and I'm always reminded of it of how powerful it can be to just be like, thank you for this experience. Thank you that like I'm feeling exactly what I'm feeling. Even and I think for a lot of people, like this is what I've heard as well, and I've felt it myself, is like it can feel quite inauthentic at first, where there's all the resistance inside that's like why are we saying thank you? We don't like this. We don't want this. But it's even still, you can still do that. Like you don't even have to listen to the part that's saying like, oh, that's inauthentic. It's like, okay, anyways, I'm still gonna be grateful that I'm receiving this. And then it becomes more and more accessible. Like,
Yeah.
and yeah,
Yeah. And you don't have to immediately be grateful for the whole thing and smiling about it,
yeah.
but just even ask yourself, okay, what in this very, very difficult, painful, uncomfortable situation can I find that would possibly be growing me or teaching me?
Mm,
Even a slither, a tiny
mm,
inkling of what you could, if anything, take away from it. So
yeah.
it doesn't always have to be like this, such a wholesome, "Ah, thank you, life, this is wonderful," because sometimes
Yeah,
it is,
yeah,
but there'll be something in it that your
yeah,
soul wants to learn from.
yeah.
Something.
Yeah, that's a great point because it can seem like it can be very easy to like find reasons to disregard the gratitude perspective of like I can't see any way. But I'm pretty sure like I can just say for myself that even at my worst time, if you put it like that, which the way you put it, which is beautiful, where it's like surely there's some like is there any lesson and even at my worst like it always like there was some like I'd be maybe trying to ignore that part of myself but if you really kind of yeah ask yourself that question authentically um I'm sure everybody will if you're being honest with yourself right you acknowledge the suffering you acknowledge the resistance but uh there is something in you that knows that there's something in this but you have to be really uh yeah, willing to hear that part of yourself and give it a little bit of space. But it can start very small, like you said, like just yeah, what is the tiny sliver of the possible learning here? And then you can start to give that a bit more space as opposed to only seeing from the resistance perspective or the like the fighting struggle. Yeah.
Yes, Kyle, and so much humility in that as well to
Yeah,
really
yeah.
like swords, especially if it's
Mm.
find like in personal situations, if I feel hurt, the immediate part of me wants to like literally bring out a sword and be like,
Yeah, yeah.
oh, it's so humbling to thank the person that's
Mm. Yeah.
hurting and
Yeah.
whatever it is, betrayed you or seemingly, I don't know, whatever it is, shut
Mm.
you out. It is that feels really hard. It's so, so humbling and empowering to just be like,
Mm. Yeah.
thank you. Okay.
Yeah.
Um,
I love that. It's yeah, I'd say humility is like yeah one of the biggest parts of this process because anytime the mind like it's like yeah I've got this I know exactly how this is unfolding or whatever and then if there's a trigger then it's like you said you have to kind of yeah if you can be grateful for it but you have to be willing to be humbled I think that's why we need to go through these phases of kind of identity destruction first. Because otherwise the ego is gonna just fight. But yeah, then but I love just like the points on empowerment because it is so empowering to um realize that yeah, every single situation is here for your growth. It's here to kind of open you up in a certain way, and you don't have to like it's there's nothing wrong with it, and it doesn't have to be a cause of suffering. It's really empowering that like something can happen that would want to trigger that reaction, and you can be like, oh, but I can actually put down the sword. It's actually in your ability to do that, and it's empowering. Like, yeah,
Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
yeah, nice. So,
Yes.
yeah,
The
exactly, right? There's nothing more needs to be said. Yeah, because the mind so often wants to take the victim perspective of, yeah, that shouldn't have happened to me, and yeah,
yeah, and why?
yeah,
Why?
and why did that happen
Mm,
to me? And I feel like people are often trying to defend that victim uh, identity because it comes with a almost a way to not feel into the stuff that you have to feel into. But yeah, the response to that is empowerment. If you let go of the victim, then you open up all that you were holding on so strongly to the victim perspective, and now that can kind of you can let go, and that can be replaced with empowerment.
yes.
Yeah.
No, it's like the victim mentality it has to put something or someone else in a perpetrator's seat because the
Yeah.
universe works. So the more you victimize yourself, the bigger the seeming perpetrator,
Mm,
and the more you take yourself out of that victim and meet yourself where you are as an empowered soul that
mm.
literally chooses and creates their life. The other person also loses their perpetrator status, or the
Yeah, yeah,
situation perpetrator status, or the illness loses
yeah.
its purpose, and suddenly everything is just a gift.
Mm. Oh, that's really
Yeah,
nice input. Yeah, because yeah, the one requires the other. If you take, yeah, as soon as the one comes up, then they equalize themselves. Yeah, yeah,
yeah.
beautiful. So how did the yeah how have things kind of unfolded for you in the external um after all of that big shift, and then like yeah, what's life been like for you uh since then, and yeah, your your path, how's it unfolded?
I think like on a physical level, I really like tested myself quite soon after that journey and that 16 weeks. I
Mm,
was my first, oh no, not my first, but my first from maybe when I was sick, but um ultra, I did a 56K run, which felt like a big thing to do so soon after
mm.
having this huge bout of fatigue and then these weeks of healing. But
Yeah.
no, it was, oh my goodness, am I,
Yeah, that's a big deal.
yeah, and no training. It was
Oh,
complete
really?
no training, completely trusting in
Yeah, yeah.
like the breathwork and the
That's so
um
cool.
yeah. So that was a cool, big physical affirmation.
Yeah, yeah. What race was it?
It was in Zim.
Okay.
It was a 56K.
Okay. I
Um,
didn't know that one, but yeah. And how did it
really,
go?
really beautiful as well. No, it was amazing. It was so much about, in
Mm,
some way, reliving the journey of feeling tired and then keeping going. So not fast,
mm,
but just an endurance feeling of I'm at the I'm at the end of my capacity. No, I'm not. And then
mm,
go
mm.
and care further, whatever it is, which I think is something every athlete understands and pushes themselves to do and finds out
Yeah.
for them
Yeah.
resilience.
That's such a
Um,
cool thing to do straight afterwards, though. Like that's the ultimate like
Yes,
trust in your body to like prove that to yourself. Yeah.
it's crazy. I think I'd gone for one 11K run in the 3 months prior.
And did you have any like fears coming up like after it or
No, that was
none?
amazing.
Oh, amazing.
So, so strong. And my family were like, why are you doing this? And I just said, I can feel that I can do it.
Yeah, yeah, amazing.
Yeah, and it's true. Like I can
Yeah.
feel it. And then, yeah, and then it's been cool. Like on the physical side, I never feel that I have to do anything. So I definitely live in the way of being a lot of the
Mm,
time. I'm
mm.
a very routine person.
Mhm,
So I
mm.
feel like something, I do it. And if I don't feel like something, I don't do it. It's
Yeah,
always
yeah.
quite, but another like really big physical thing, which also I actually can't believe, even thinking about it sometimes, to go through so much fatigue and then be able to do these big things. But there
Yeah.
was a 7-day multi-stage. It's called KM, and it's a
Yes.
200 run in the
That's the one
desert.
you did recently, hey?
Yes, yeah. I think I saw you soon before or
Yes, yeah,
soon after.
you it was just before. Yeah, you mentioned you were going to do it. Yeah. So
And
how
it
was
was
that?
amazing. And but the same feeling, like that resilience feeling that came up in
Mm,
breath, came up on the other run, and came up through so many of my sessions with Greg, of just like complete self-belief that
mm,
this feat is possible.
mm.
Um, yeah, I must like just
So
clarify. Definitely don't do these things fast.
but it's a beautiful like I love it. It's such a great inspiration to show what's possible, that like yeah, you can have this really intense fatigue for a really long time and you can come to this place of total healing within yourself where and
Yeah,
because people like often in people's minds there's always it's like especially listening to other people's stories, there's always like, oh, but maybe we'll get triggered by this again, or maybe we'll get triggered by that again. But that's a pretty good, like, yeah,
yeah.
key showing the
Especially,
what's possible. Yeah.
yeah, especially when a doctor has looked you in the eyes and told you you'll have it for the rest of your life.
Mm, mm,
Trust
yeah.
that. You trust that, and we trust the word chronic, and we
Yeah.
trust.
Yeah.
So, and sometimes it's the case, but really, we can heal ourselves. And
Mm,
George is a wonderful teacher in this.
yeah. Yeah. I love his kind of real sharing that message that you can heal yourself. Yeah.
Yeah, it's wonderful. And he uses the word placebo in all these realities where, by telling someone something or making them believe something, the effect happens.
Mm, mm,
Or not. There was deep truth in what the person was saying or what they were taking.
yeah.
The placebo really, really, if you believe it, it's real.
Yeah. Yeah. That
Um,
that was a powerful kind of part of my path was like studying the placebo and like that really helped me to see how I was stuck in my own kind of yeah reality of um yeah I just seeing like how belief can manifest so strongly.
reality of belief.
Yeah, exactly, but
Yeah, it's the
uh
same. It's an interchangeable word. If
yeah,
reality, it's like it is real if you believe it. Anything's real if you believe it.
exactly, but often people or like all of us, so it depends where you are in your path, but the placebo is such a nice like undeniable uh expression of that, it's like yeah, people can often try to dismiss this stuff, but I think that's such a great like place to uh show it from is like from placebo. Yeah, yeah, and Joe
Yeah,
does that really well. Yeah.
he does it well. Some of his stories you actually can't believe. Would highly recommend
Yeah,
this.
yeah, it's funny. I didn't use his work a lot directly when I was healing. But I heard his work shared by other people and it was kind of filtered through other people. But actually, it's so funny we're talking about it right now because I have one of his books. Like, my filter is not working,
Amazing.
but
Which one
it's
is it?
the supernatural one, Becoming Supernatural. I don't, have you read it?
No, my mom's got it on her bedside table. So
Oh,
when
okay, yeah. It's
she was telling me little snippets of it.
yeah, but what I thought of is what you
Yeah,
just mentioned, like some of the stories in there. It's such a great kind of presentation of this ability to heal oneself is because that's what our minds really resonate with is like someone's actual healing story. That's why I love having these conversations as well, where okay, you can hear all the concepts, but I want to hear about, this person or that person who went from fatigue to running ultra marathons or whatever. That's the real starting point of seeing what's possible. Yeah.
yeah. Well, thank you for letting me share my story
Yeah.
here.
No, it's
As
been
someone who feels like that, if they're questioning if they can heal, and to know that the answer is yes,
mm,
and to feel the flip side of it, not undermine the depth of what it is to
mm.
live fatigue. Both
Yeah.
are real.
Yeah, exactly. To really that sort of acceptance, I think, is key to not deny whatever it is you're experiencing, but then to really fuel the little fire within that wants to keep going. Um, one thing I wanted to come back to because you've mentioned it a couple of times, and I think it's such a foundation of the whole healing was the stuff about joy. Like I think that specifically in the chronic fatigue world, I've heard some people speak about this before, and when they said it, I was like, that's so on the money. Where that's what's like we're so stuck in this kind of serious world when you're trying to heal from chronic fatigue or when you're dealing with it where it's all about like managing energy and managing symptoms and surviving and all of that. And again, like we just said, it's understandable for sure. It's a tough world, but when you get something in your life that kind of points to this joy perspective, it's such a like I would say that's so key to the whole healing journey because it was for me as well. It was like, what do you actually want to do? Like, what are the things that are actually going to bring joy into your life? And that's where the energy can start to come back in. And that's why you can go and then run like such a crazy ultra marathon because you're not doing it from a space of like, this is what I should be doing. This is, what's
Exactly.
safe and all of that. It's joy. And it's like, it's a powerful energy source.
Yes, Kyle. Oh, it's like really you don't owe anyone anything. You
Mm.
don't owe society anything. You don't owe people close. You don't owe anyone anything.
Yeah.
And also it doesn't owe you anything. So
Yeah.
it will
That's
it
the flip
will
side. Yeah.
by you.
Yeah.
But you are completely the center part of creating your reality.
Mm.
You really only have yourself,
Yeah.
and then you bring in whatever is beautiful or not beautiful around you, but it always comes back to us.
Yeah.
So you're neither the hero or the victim
Yeah.
or God or the devil, but duality.
Yeah.
We are the dual, wonderful, complex, and empowered spirit living in a human body,
Mm.
and we don't have to do anything. So we
Mm.
might as well brings us joy.
Yeah. That's beautiful. Yeah, exactly. And I liked how you showed those exercises earlier on from that book because it can seem, if you're really stuck, it can seem like it's very difficult to do you're like, okay, I can't just go out and run a marathon, but you shared it quite nicely of just the real simplest forms of joy that you can start from and use that as a building block, so like just going and walking bare feet on the earth or um drinking a cup of tea or whatever it is, it's always available if you're willing to really get in touch with yourself, and like yeah, write or whatever. It's like, okay, what are things that I could do now to start to bring some joy into my life. And then it can start to have bigger and bigger and bigger effects in the longer run. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, exactly right. And then you notice as well, when you do those
Mm,
practical exercises of writing down or thinking about what brings me joy, then suddenly you find later on in the day you pick up a piece of lavender and you smell it and you think, oh, this brings me joy,
Yeah,
So
yeah,
something makes your brain start looking for those
yeah,
feelings.
yeah, exactly. You kind of you're replacing the filter of what you're looking through the world at, and it becomes more accessible. Absolutely.
I think so.
Yeah. Awesome.
Sure.
Well, I think that's a good place to end the conversation on. Yeah. Thank you so much for sharing everything, Natalie.
Well, honestly, so special to chat. I think especially because it's a shared
Mm,
experience in many ways. Of course, unique in its own way, but it's very wonderful to be bouncing off such a deep understanding
yeah.
uh,
Yeah,
of
it's really yeah, it's so cool to see how many like differences there can be in the journey, but like at this the core of it, it's like the same process that's unfolding, and the same kind of depths of understanding that's happening. But all of the details, it's cool how many different paths there are and how it is always going to be like very much unique to the individual's own path. Yeah.
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 Oh, thank you. Thank you
So
so much.
awesome. There's like so much I love the way you describe things because also your perspective is very different to many people that I've spoken to before. It's like I really like it. Yeah.
Mm,
Yeah.
good. All different angles, different tools.
Yeah, exactly. Different tools, different angles, different perspectives. Yeah. Yeah, exactly.